So since there's not much NFL news going around, especially around the Giants, I mean, ever since Aldrick Rosas's incident, nothing's really been happening. I wanted to do a video of kind of going back in time and looking at some of the Giants' draft blunders, specifically during the latter portion of the Jerry Reese era. So this will be from 2010 to 2020. Obviously, I won't be including like the last three picks, all the Gettleman picks, because, as much as I disagree with taking a running back that early, Saquon Barkley, as we know, is a phenomenal player. I don't think it was the right pick at the right time, but still, he's a great player. We should know that by now. Daniel Jones in 2019, he showed a lot of promise, so I can't really say that was a bad pick. I still have concerns about his ceiling. Can he be a top 10 quarterback? We'll have to wait and see about that one. And Andrew Thomas this year, I was a huge fan of, so hopefully in 10 years from now, I won't be looking at that as a bad pick. I hope that's a good one. So I won't include those. This is probably from 2010 to 2017. Of course, there were some bad picks from Jerry Reese during that time, specifically Ereck Flowers, Eli Apple in the first round, and a couple others. So I just want to throw those guys in there. And this list is kind of depressing. So if you're a Giants fan, prepare to be very sad by this. The Giants have passed on many good players. And during this list, I'm not going to, I wanted to pick guys that were picked around 10 to 20 picks after. I don't want to say the Giants should have picked this guy in the third round instead of, some guy that should have went in the first round. I feel like that's not fair. So I'm obviously not going to have guys that were late round gems on this list. If they were picked 10 to 20 picks later, then I'm going to put them on there. If they were picked 2 or 3 rounds later, then I don't think that's fair to Jerry Reese or whoever was making the picks for the Giants. So I'll be fair in this list, but we'll go over some picks and a revised Giants draft of the past 10 years or so. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and let's get into it. We will start in 2017 when the Giants took a tight end in Evan Engram. I think we all knew they were going to take a tight end. It was just a matter of which one. I remember David Njoku was a big name around that time as well, O.J. Howard, but I think those guys went before. They might have had a shot at Njoku, I'm not sure, but I know O.J. Howard was picked before the Giants were on the clock. So just a few picks later, there were actually 3 really good options after Evan Engram. So Engram was taken 23rd overall, and this was the year after the Giants had that 11-5 season. They lost to Green Bay in the playoffs, so they had a pretty high pick, or a low pick, however you want to say, but a lower pick in the draft that year. But there were 3 really good players the Giants passed on. And as for Evan Engram, he has showed a lot of promise. I mean, he does some things that tight ends just don't do, and just, beating cornerbacks with his speed, and he's just a very talented guy. Unfortunately, cannot stay on the field. In his rookie season, he was like one of the only targets around because Odell was hurt. I don't know if that was the Brandon Marshall year. The Brandon Marshall was hurt. Sterling Shepard missed some games as well, and Evan Engram was basically the only target around. And then it was like Roger Lewis and guys like that. So Evan Engram's stats in his first year were really good, but he's kind of fallen off since then, and a lot of that was due to injury. So I do think there's a chance that Evan Engram can have a 4th or even 5th year bounce back at some point, but the guy definitely has his durability concerns. But as for players the Giants passed on, number 1 I have is Tre'Davious White, who's just a phenomenal cornerback for the Buffalo Bills. He was taken 27th overall, a 2019 first-team All-Pro, 12 interceptions in 3 seasons, and in my opinion, definitely a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. You can even say top 3. I would not argue with that. Number 2 is TJ Watt. He was taken 30th overall, just a terrific pass rusher. He was nearly the defensive player of the year in 2019. He's had 34.5 sacks in 3 seasons, 15 forced fumbles during that time, and 70 quarterback hits as well, and a first-team All-Pro in 2019. So TJ Watt would have been very nice to have, honestly, for a team that lacks an alpha pass rusher. And number 3, I only put 2 on the pictures here because that's what would fit, but a third one is Ryan Ramczyk of the New Orleans Saints, who plays right tackle. He was taken 32nd overall. So he's arguably the best right tackle in football. I'm sure if you keep up very closely with the NFL, you know how good Ramczyk is, and some people hate on Jerry Reese because he passed on him, which, looking back on it, was probably a bad idea. But anyway, he had a 90.9 PFF grade in 2019 and was a first-team All-Pro in 2019, and he's a guy that keeps getting better every year. He's still very young. I think he's like 25, 26 or something like that. So he's a guy who will probably get even better, and that could have been a really important piece for the Giants at right tackle. So unfortunately, they took Evan Engram. I still think it has the potential to be a good pick, but right now it's not. And these other guys on the list so far have had a phenomenal NFL career, for a young player. So I think the Giants probably should have taken one of these 3 guys instead. But, this whole list is hindsight. So it's very nice to look back on this and say, oh, yeah, you should have taken that guy. But, yeah, I think the Giants could have went in a different direction, and taking Tre'Davious White, TJ Watt, or Ryan Ramczyk would have been a much better move for the franchise in the future. Next, we have the 2016 draft, and of course, the Giants took Eli Apple in this one. They took him 10th overall. It was a pick that surprised a lot of people. I was not keeping up with the draft stuff as closely at that age, but I really wanted Miles Jack that year, so I was disappointed, and Miles Jack has been much better than Eli Apple so far. So when the Giants took Apple, there were some red flags. His mom was very involved, which I thought was kind of weird the whole time, and the guy just had a really bad attitude. He was called a cancer a couple years later, and then once the new regime took over, and Dave Gettleman specifically, he was traded basically a few months into the season. Once the Giants were really bad in 2018 and knew they were not going to compete, Eli Apple was shipped out, and rightfully so. And I'm kind of happy the Giants got like a 4th and a 7th round pick for him, so I think that was a good trade. Apple, I think, is still a free agent. I'm not positive. I know he signed with the Raiders, and that was like rescinded, so I'm not really sure what happened with him, but he might be out there still. But he, I guess, has a chance to be a good player still. He's probably still 25, 26, so he's still a pretty young guy, but still. Definitely not a guy you would take in the top 10 if you had to do this over again. So the other guys on this list, of course, Laramie Tunsil, and we know about the whole gas mask thing on draft night, and someone definitely sabotaged him, but the Dolphins took him 13th overall, which was a really good pick for him. 2016 All-Rookie Team, 2019 Pro Bowler, a 75.8 PFF grade in 2019, and was traded for 2 first-round picks, so obviously a very valuable player, playing left tackle, a very valuable position. I think he played some left guard in his first year, but then once he made that full transition to left tackle, the guy's been one of the best left tackles in the game, and he's still very young, so this would have been a much better guy to have on our team rather than Eli Apple. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The next guy we have on this list is Ryan Kelly, who was a center for the Colts. He was taken 18th overall, so he's another big piece of this Colts offensive line transformation. The Colts offensive line went from crap to really good, and I think that Ryan Kelly's a big piece of that. Of course, having a good center helps a lot. So he was a 2019 Pro Bowlers, had PFF grades over 72 in every year except for 2017, so 3 out of his 4 years in the NFL. So he's been a really good player. I think one of the top 10 centers in football, and still a very, very young player as well, so that would have been a much better pick looking back on it. But the Giants took a shot on this cornerback from Ohio State, and of course it did not work out. So it is what it is. I mean, Eli Apple's a guy that has all the athleticism in the world, but it just did not work out. And so far, taking him in the top 10 looks like a very bad decision. So now on to 2015, and we all know this was when everyone's favorite Giant, Ereck Flowers, was taken, and this is what happens when you reach for need rather than the best player available. You end up taking a guy like Ereck Flowers, who did have upside, but no, it did not work at all. The guy was awful at left tackle in the NFL. Played some guard last year for the Redskins, was, I guess, league average, and then went on to sign for a lot of money with the Dolphins, so I guess good for him, but still, his time with the Giants is very forgettable. So, in 2015, they could have taken Todd Gurley 10th overall, and I'm definitely not a running back in, the top half of the first round type of guy, but Todd Gurley compared to Ereck Flowers, it's not even close. So Todd Gurley was the 2015 Offensive Rookie of the Year, coming back from an ACL injury. I think he missed the first 2 games that year anyway. So then he went on to be the 2017 Offensive Player of the Year. He led the league in touchdowns and rushing touchdowns twice, a 2-time first-team All-Pro, in 3 separate seasons, averaging over 4.7 yards per carry. So as we know, Todd Gurley's been a phenomenal player. Now, injuries are kind of hindering his career. He's going to go to Atlanta next year, and we'll see how he does. But Atlanta kind of has a rough offensive line, so we'll see what he does there. But another guy they could have taken who definitely got off to a rough start was Devontae Parker, who was taken 14th overall. So he struggled his first 4 seasons, whether it was injuries or just playing time and just being effective when he's on the field. But in 2019, Devontae Parker had 72 receptions for over 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns. So he now looks like one of the better up-and-coming receivers in the NFL. He just turned 27, so he still could be a really good wide receiver for the next 5 years or so, maybe even more. So hopefully Devontae Parker stays healthy for his sake. But yes, taking Ereck Flowers was just terrible. And, this was a pick that definitely set the franchise back. I think it might have taken some good years off of Eli Manning's career, and it definitely... Eli Manning did not have that same pocket presence in 2010 that he did in 2017, 2018, and I think a lot of that had to do with Ereck Flowers. I mean, when you don't know what's going on behind you and you know your left tackle is complete garbage, you're not going to be confident in the pocket. Eli Manning just had terrible pocket awareness in, the back half of his career, not the back half, but the final 3 or 4 years of his career. And I think Ereck Flowers played a big part in that. So this was a pick that definitely not only set the Giants back as a team, but I think might have taken a couple years off their starting quarterback and hopefully future Hall of Famer's career as well. Now on to 2013 when the Giants took Justin Pugh, 19th overall, a guard out of Syracuse. So this was a pick that was good. You're addressing the offensive line. I think Justin Pugh's had an above average NFL career. Unfortunately, he was not able to stay healthy all the time, which has been a big issue for him, obviously. I think he played all 16 games his rookie year, but hasn't played a full season since. So for Pugh, he is an above average player, but it's just the playing time and staying on the field stuff was an issue for him. But it wasn't the worst pick in the world. This was better than Ereck Flowers. This was better than Eli Apple, and Justin Pugh was a guy that was versatile. He played tackle sometimes when guys were injured, so he was a guy that could move around the offensive line. So it wasn't the worst pick in the world, but there were better players after him. So as you can see, DeAndre Hopkins was taken 27th overall. We all know about him. Top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, probably. I would say top 3. He's missed 1 game in 7 seasons. He's had over 800 receiving yards in every year of his career. 4 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros, led the NFL in touchdowns in 2017. The guy's had over 1,000 yards in 5 out of his 7 seasons, and he's just the model of consistency. Really good player. Him and Odell Beckham on the same team would have been just ridiculous and very fun to watch. So another guy, not as good as DeAndre Hopkins, but Desmond Trufant was taken 22nd overall that year, so he was never an elite or even top 5 cornerback in the NFL, but he's been very solid for a long time. So he had 13 interceptions and 79 passes defended in 7 seasons. He's had a PFF grade over 69 every season of his career, so he's a consistent guy. I mean, yeah, he'll get burnt here and there, but I think for the most part, Desmond Trufant would have been a very solid cornerback one for a long time. He's been doing this for a while now, 7 seasons, so I think if he was here and was a cornerback one for this team, maybe the Giants don't have to sign Janoris Jenkins to a ridiculous contract at that point. Maybe if they made a different pick back then you can take the Janoris Jenkins contract off the books and maybe sign somebody else. So it's just a whole ripple effect here. But I think Trufant had a pretty good career. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins would have been the best pick here, and he was taken 8 picks later. As I said before, Justin Pugh was not the worst pick in the world, but the Giants, if they went a different direction, could have had a future Hall of Fame wide receiver who went 8 picks later. Now on to 2012, when the Giants had a 32nd overall pick after winning the Super Bowl, they took David Wilson, the running back out of Virginia Tech, and the guy was explosive, he was electric, but unfortunately only played 2 seasons, I believe, in the NFL. And then in training camp in his 3rd year, he had his injury pop up again, and then his NFL career was over a week later. So I can't blame anyone for this pick, but looking back on it, there were better players that went after him. I do think there's a world where if David Wilson was healthy, he might have been a phenomenal player. The guy had some issues with fumbling. That's definitely something that needed to be addressed, but it is fixable. But unfortunately, we never got to see the best of David Wilson. But there were flashes of him being a great running back one day, but it just never happened, unfortunately. So a guy who went 37th overall that year was Mitchell Schwartz, who's one of the best right tackles in football currently. He plays for the Chiefs now, just won a Super Bowl. Good for him. He has not missed a game in his career. A 2012 All-Rookie Team guy, a first-team All-Pro in 2018, a PFF grade above 72 every year of his career. And I saw before when I was researching this, the Browns lost Mitchell Schwartz and Alex Mack, who's a great center for the Falcons now, in the same offseason. So I have no idea how you let 2 great offensive linemen like that leave in the same offseason, but then again, that's the Browns for you. Another guy who went 47th overall was Bobby Wagner. So Bobby Wagner, 5 first-team All-Pros and 6 Pro Bowls in that time. I think arguably, I would say the top 2 inside linebacker of the past decade. He actually was the number 1 linebacker for Pro Football Hall of Fame's All 2010 team. So according to them, he was the best. I think Luke Kuechly's a guy you can throw in there as well. He has led the league in tackle twice. He rarely misses games, and the guy's just a stud. So I think Bobby Wagner could have been that linebacker that the Giants have not had in a very long time. I know it would not have been, actually it would have been a first-round linebacker because it was the last pick of the first round, so I know they haven't taken one since Carl Banks, as we all know, but I think Bobby Wagner could have been just a franchise-changing pick because the guy is just a terrific player. Would he have had the same career here as he did in Seattle? Maybe not, but overall the guy is still a terrific player and definitely better than, whoever we had, old John Beeson at that point, so I would have taken Bobby Wagner for sure. I would have taken Mitchell Schwartz at right tackle as well. The Giants took a guy who I think had a lot of promise, but once again, it's a running back, and running backs do get hurt the most. I mean, it happens. So I think taking another position probably would have been the right move, but the Giants felt they were probably a running back away. I know they lost Brandon Jacobs that offseason. Ahmad Bradshaw was getting older and was injured sometimes, so the Giants felt that taking a guy like David Wilson was the right move. Unfortunately, you cannot predict injuries, and that's what happened. So taking Mitchell Schwartz or Bobby Wagner probably would have been the better answer there. Now on to 2011 when the Giants took Prince Amukamara, 19th overall, the cornerback. So Amukamara was an average Giant. I think he didn't exactly live up to that first round hype, but he's been a pretty solid player throughout his career. I mean, his career's been going on for like 9, 10 years now, and he's been around and playing at a pretty average level, which I think is hard to do. So I know it's like I'm not giving him the highest praise here, but I think being an average player for this long of a time is actually pretty impressive when you look at the longevity and him staying on the field and stuff like that. He was a pretty good piece to the Bears defense that was really good a couple years ago, and now Amukamara just signed with the Raiders, I believe, so we'll see how he does there. He's now 31 years old. But some other options that year were Anthony Costanzo, 22nd overall. So he was never like a top 3 or even top 5 left tackle in football. And it's kind of like Desmond Trufant, as we talked about before, but a really good player for a long time. So I think he's probably a top 10 left tackle. He was talking about retirement like last year, but he's now back. He's had PFF grades over 77 every year since his rookie year. The Giants definitely could have used a really good left tackle during this time, and maybe this could have really prolonged Eli Manning's career instead of taking Ereck Flowers a few years later. I think if they had a guy like Costanzo in there instead of Ereck Flowers and whoever they had at left tackle prior to him, then Eli Manning's career could have been saved for a couple more years and he might have been better. So that's kind of unfortunate, and it would have been a great pick, but unfortunately the Giants missed out on that. Another guy that would have been a great pick is Cam Jordan of the Saints, a defensive end. He was taken 24th overall. He's one of the best defensive ends of the decade, 87 sacks in 9 seasons, 5 Pro Bowls, and 1 first-team All-Pro. He has not missed a game in 9 years. That's incredible. And I think him and Jason Pierre-Paul could have been like a Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney type of combination. I know the Giants won a Super Bowl after drafting Prince Amukamara, so if you could do it over again, you probably wouldn't do it over again because you're not going to trade away that Super Bowl. But looking at it now, I think Cam Jordan or Anthony Costanzo would have been really good options as compared to Prince Amukamara, who never signed a second contract with the Giants. So, they did win a Super Bowl, so it is what it is, but I do think Costanzo or Cam Jordan would have been great options for this team. So here are the picks that I left out. You probably noticed I skipped a few years in here. So the guys I would keep here: 2018 Saquon Barkley. Once again, not the guy I would take, but we know Saquon Barkley is a phenomenal running back. I think we knew that anyway. Like, even before he was in the NFL, we knew this guy was going to be a stud. So I can't really say that he's a bad player and that we shouldn't have drafted him. So, it is what it is. In 2014, Odell Beckham, 10th overall. This guy went on to shatter records his first 3 years. Unfortunately, got hurt at some points, and I wouldn't say off the field issues. It was more on the field issues with like his temper and stuff like that, and the whole kicking net situation, and it just, the bad playoff performance and stuff. So that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, but I love Odell Beckham, so I can't really say anything too bad about him. And in 2010, Jason Pierre-Paul, 15th overall, a guy that was an athletic freak. The Giants and Jerry Reese took a chance on him. His second year in the league, he just broke out, was a big piece of the Giants' Super Bowl run. Unfortunately, had the July 4th incident, so that sucks, but he came back, I think had a double-digit sack year after that, so he still had a pretty good career, had 12.5 sacks for Tampa, I think, a couple years ago, so the guy's still playing at a pretty high level, so I'm very happy for him. And as for Daniel Jones, Andrew Thomas, we're not sure yet. I mean, I think Thomas will be fine. Jones, I'm like 60% sure he'll be a good pick. I'm not positive, but if the fumbles and the turnovers continue, then that could be an issue, obviously. So hopefully those picks work out. If you guys enjoyed this video and want something similar to this, I could do from like 2000 to 2010. I could do picks from 2010 to 2020, but do like later round picks of guys we missed out on and stuff like that. I don't know. Give me some type of ideas here because, as I said, there's not much news going around here, but I'd still like to put out some content for you guys. So as long as you enjoyed this video, then let me know, and we'll do something like this next time. So hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you next time.